Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series on clinical SAS ADaM programming. In this video, we will see how to derive treatment emergent flag in adverse events. So considering the baseline severity of an event and also the cutoff after treatment end date. So this lesson is part of the concept called treatment emergence pre and post treatment occurrences. And again, this is part of ADaM programming series. So, what is a treatment emergent adverse event or TEAE? According to ICH E9, TEAE is defined as an event that emerges during treatment, having been absent pre-treatment or worsens relative to the pre-treatment state. In other words, an event can be called treatment emergent if it is pre-existing before treatment start but worsens in severity after treatment start. This means if it is again occurring after treatment start but at the same severity or and but do not worsen, so we do not call it treatment emergent. And the second thing is the event could have been absent before treatment start but occurred after treatment start. So we call those events as treatment emergent adverse events. Sometimes, depending on the half-life of the drug, we consider a cutoff period of X days after treatment end date when deriving treatment emergence information. So basically, we look for events which occurred between treatment start and end date, but in certain cases, depending on the half-life of the drug and how long the drug remains in your body after you take the last dose, so we consider those many number of days while deriving the treatment emergent flag. In ADaM ADAE, we use TRTEMFL variable to capture the treatment emergence information. The allowed values in this variable are y and n. The complete code for this lesson can be obtained from the description link provided in the video. Now we will take a look at the input dataset that will be used for this lesson. So we'll be using AE dataset as input. In the example data which I am taking, I have already merged the treatment start date and end date information from ADSL and kept it ready in the SDTM adverse events dataset. So we will use this dataset as input and then create the treatment emergent flag. Now let us take a look at the specification for this lesson. So the specification is listing the three key variables that will be needed for this lesson. So the first one is ASTDT. It is saying convert AESTDTC to numeric format. So AESTDTC is an SDTM variable in AE dataset which contains the adverse event start date in date character format in ISO format. So we are being asked to convert it into numeric format and save it in ASTDT. Similarly, for AE and DT, we are being asked to use the value from AE, and DTC and convert it into numeric format. And then comes the derivation algorithm for TRTEMFL, which is treatment emergent flag. So there are two components for this. First one says for the AED codes which do not exist prior to treatment start date. So along in line with the definition of the adverse event or treatment emergence, so it is divided into two parts. For the D codes which do not exist prior to treatment start date and for the D codes which exist prior to treatment start and recur after treatment start. So for the D codes which do not exist prior to treatment start, we are being asked to set to Y on the records where adverse event start date is not null and greater than or equals to treatment start date and ASTDT is less than or is equal to TRT EDT plus 15 days. So any event that is happening in between treatment start date and within 15 days of treatment end date have to be called as treatment emergent for the D codes which do not exist prior to treatment start. But for the D codes which exist prior to treatment start and recur after treatment start, so we are being asked to set to Y on the records where ASTDT is greater than or equal to treatment start date and ASTDT is less than or is equal to TRTEDT plus 15 and the severity is greater than the maximum severity observed for that AED code and subject ID prior to treatment start. And for everything else, we are being asked to set to N. So this is the key here. So we are being asked to consider the severity and compare it with the maximum severity observed for that AED code and use subsidy prior to treatment start. So now let us try to manually identify the treatment emergent flag for the data which we have. So I have already derived ASTDT and AENDT and kept it ready, and I have also sorted the events based on event start date so that it will be easy to identify the pre-treatment events. So here in this case we have data for only one subject 1001 and this subject took his treatment on 6th Jan 2010. So any event that exists prior to 6th Jan will be considered as pre-treatment event. So let us try to identify. So 6th Jan till 5th Jan we have a few events. So all of these events are pre-treatment events. So let us try to mark them with some color. So these are the events which are happening prior to treatment start and there are some post-treatment events. So let us try to identify the decodes which are present prior to treatment start. So there is one peptic ulcer, neuropathy and two instances of headache are happening before treatment start. So for in order to derive the treatment emergent flag, we also have to consider these events maximum severity prior to treatment. So let us try to fill it in a variable called base shape. So for peptic ulcer, there is only one instance during pre-treatment period and the severity is moderate. So let us, that will become the baseline severity of peptic ulcer for this subject. And neuropathy, there is only one instance and the severity on that record is mild, so that will become the maximum severity which we are populating in base shape. For headache, there are two pre-treatment events, one with mild and the second one with moderate. The highest severity here is moderate, so the baseline severity will be for headache rows will be moderate. So if it will be populated on all the records of headache. So headache, the highest severity seen during pre-treatment period was moderate. So we are populating it as moderate across all records of headache. And then nausea, so we do not have it in the pre-treatment period, so it will be null. And for vomiting and diarrhea as well, as they are not seen during pre-treatment period, baseline severity would be null. So now let us try to populate the TRT EMFL. So are these peptic ulcer? This happened prior to treatment start, so this can directly be classified as treatment emergent is equal to no. So 10th May 2009 on for neuropathy when compared to treatment start date of 6th Jan 2010. So this is also not treatment emergent because this is clearly happening before the treatment start. And then there is this headache on 3rd Jan when compared to treatment start date. So this is also not treatment emergent. And then on 5th Jan also there was a headache when compared to 6th Jan's treatment start. So this will also become TRT EMFL is equal to N. So now comes headache on 7th Jan with mild severity. So when for the decodes which happened prior and recurred after treatment start date, so we need to check the date and compare it with treatment start date and also at the same time check the baseline severity for that event. So here if you see the headache happened after treatment start date, but the maximum severity seen during pre-treatment period was moderate. So this severity is less than the baseline severity. So if we take a look at the specification, we were asked to populate for the recurring events only if the severity seen during post-treatment is greater than the maximum severity observed for that decode. So for this condition, so this would become no, because though the event happened after treatment started, the severity is not greater than the baseline maximum severity. So there is another instance of headache on 10th Jan, but this time it is severe, and but in the baseline severity we have a value of moderate. So this clearly indicates that the severity increased when compared to the maximum observed baseline severity. So this would qualify for treatment emergence. So for nausea, as this was not occurring pre-treatment, we can just clearly check the dates and then populate it, the treatment emergent flag. So 1st Feb, 6th Jan, and if we take a look at the treatment end date, it is on 9th March 2010. So it is clearly in between the treatment started and end date, so it will become Y. And then for vomiting, so 3rd March, so 6th Jan and 9th March are the treatment started and date. So this is clearly in between those two dates. So this would also become treatment emergent adverse event. So, and finally, the one diarrhea occurred on 1st April. So this is clearly after 9th March, but we also have to check if the event is falling within 15 days of 9th March. So 9th March plus 15 is around 24th March. So as this event is clearly happening after that 15 days cutoff of treatment end date, this would become a no. So we have populated our treatment emergent flag for all the events. So now let us take a look at the programming approach that is used to derive treatment emergent flag for this lesson. So a copy of SDTM AE is being created, and then ASTDT and AENDT are created by converting AESTDTC and AENDTC into numeric format using input function and YYMMDD10.in format. And then, so in order to get the maximum severity per AE decode for the events occurred prior to treatment start date, a proc sort is being used. Within that proc sort, a where statement is being used to subset the events which happened before treatment start. So this is the condition that is subsetting the events which happened prior to treatment start date. And within this, so the records are sorted based on the subject ID and the preferred term or AED code and the severity of the adverse event. So if there exists more than one record or with the same decode value, so we are making sure that the severity of like mild, moderate, severe, the severe record or the highest severity is a record is coming at the end within that decode on subject. So after sorting that way, in the next data step, a last dot concept is being applied, and then the last record is being pulled for each AED code. As we have made sure in the sorting that the record with the highest severity comes at the end, so we are using that record, and we are renaming that severity variable on that last record as base sev, and then keeping only subject ID, AED code and base sev. And then we are merging it back to the parent AE dataset at subject and AED code level, so that baseline severity for the pre-treatment events would be populated across all the decodes, including pre and post-treatment records. And then we are deriving treatment emergent flag. So first condition is we are checking whether the subject took a dose or not, because treatment emergent comes into picture only when the subject has taken a dose. So that can be checked for the presence of treatment start date variable. And then after that, we are checking whether the adverse event start date is greater than or is equal to treatment start date, and at the same time it is less than or is equal to the treatment end date plus 15 days, because we were asked to use that additional 15 days of cutoff period. So after treatment end date. So we are checking if it is in between that start and cutoff end dates, and then if it is meeting that, then we are checking if the baseline severity is present or not. So if baseline severity is absent, which means a baseline severity would be absent only for those decodes which do not have which did not occur during the pre-treatment period. So it will be present if the event is pre-existing. So if it is base save absence, it clearly indicates that this is a new event. And then for those events, we are populating TRTEMFL is equal to Y. So else, if A is save greater than base save. So else, if base save is not missing, which means we need to compare the current records A is save with base save and then populate TRTMFL as Y on those records which meet this condition. So we are checking that here. And all the other records which are not identified as treatment emergent will have a value of TRT-EMFL is equal to N. So this is how we can programmatically identify or derive TRT-EMFL. So now let us take a look at the intermediate data sets that are getting created out of this processing. So here using AE01 with an AE02, so we have ASTDT and AENDT being created. And then, so first step we have subsetted the events which occurred prior to treatment and then sorted them in a way that subject, AED code and AESEV. So mild and then moderate. So for AESEV, we do not need to create any numeric variable because alphabetically also mild, moderate and severe get sorted as per the highest severity grade because MI comes before MO and then comes our letter S. So even if we sort severity based on character variable, so the highest severity record gets sorted at the end. So we have made sure that the records are sorted this way, and then we used our last dot concept to filter the last record within subject and decode so that we have the highest severity seen during baseline period would be obtained. And then we merged baseline severity to the entire AE records at subject and AE decode level so that it is populated on all the records of that decode and subject. And then we used our treatment emergent logic and then populated it across all rows. So here, so we had three events programmatically identified. Let us see how many we had manually identified as Y. So we have the same three events as manually identified as Y, and the programmatically identified number of treatment emergent events is also the same. So this is how we can programmatically derive our treatment emergent flag in adverse events dataset. Thank you for watching. Keep learning.